conversations about these questions, there is a growing sense of boredom, if not a growing disbelief in the central tenets of political correctness. And this has opened up a fresh field of opportunity for teachers in the humanities to think about their disciplines in a new, which I hope will be an older way. Teachers of the humanities want desperately to believe in the value of their work, and I believe that the wheel is turning slowly but irrevocably and irresistibly, and that they will find increasingly a good and satisfying answer to the question of what is valuable in the humanities and in the work that teachers of the humanities do with their students in the classroom in the tradition of liberal learning of which they were themselves once the custodians before they abandoned it for the modern research ideal. Now I want to conclude with an obvious cautionary thought. It will have been on your minds, I suspect, through much of what I've had to say, certainly as I've wound my way around to my conclusion here. And that is that any new age, any rebirth of what I've called liberal learning, of secular humanism in the humanities, can't be simply a return to an older age. We can't turn the clock back and pretend that we're living again in 1950 or 1920 or 1880. We can't do that, and we would never wish to do that. And even if it were possible, it would be wrong, as Richard Nixon once said. It just would be wrong. It's not something we should do. Our world is different in ways that we must respect, not just because to do so would be ignorant and futile, but because we have a moral responsibility to do so as well. And I'll just mention a couple of things by way of example. We are today, all of us, wherever we live, in Hanover, New Hampshire, or New York City, or Bangkok, or New Delhi, or Basra. We are, all of us, increasingly citizens of the world. We have our local attachments and commitments, but we are, every one of us, increasingly a cosmopolite in a planetary civilization. It is not enough to be at home among the works of one's own natal civilization, if I may put it that way. For most of us, here at Dartmouth, at Yale, where I teach, our natal civilization is the civilization of the West. That's not true for every student, of course, but it is true for the overwhelming majority of students. It is essential, I believe, for an undergraduate growing up in this civilization and with a birth attachment to it, to be on close speaking terms with its master ideas and great traditions, which are traditions of quarrel and disagreement as much as anything else. And I say that because you cannot be a thoughtful, and therefore you cannot be a responsible heir to this tradition if you have not soaked yourself in it for a good long time. That's essential, but of course it's not enough. Our world is sufficient, its horizons are large enough to demand of every one of us that we have some, perhaps not comparably deep, although that would be wonderful were it attainable, but certainly something more than just a glancing kind of arm's length familiarity with one or more of the world's other great civilizations, too. Something that goes beyond cocktail chatter, but reaches down into the depths, into the bowels of that other or those other civilizations, whichever ones you choose to study. It's not enough to know a thimbleful about the great works of the West and half a thimbleful about the great works of China. You need to have a full cupful, at least, of each. And then I could imagine some other cups that ought to be filled as well. And any revival of a great books program enlivened by the spirit of secular humanism would have to take our new cosmopolitanism into account. That, I think, goes without saying. It will require some ingenuity, and there will be disagreements, certainly at the margin and maybe at the center, about how much weight to give to what and which books to read and this and that. But the main path, to my mind, is relatively clear. And then, too, I'll make one last point and stop. There are questions that are very, very much on our minds today, and quite properly so, that were nowhere near the center of attention in the humanities classroom circa 1950. The meaning of gender identity and gender equality, for example. If this was a subject that came into discussion at all 60 or 70 years ago, it got perhaps 5 minutes, a breezy 5 minutes, as you rushed through Plato's discussion of the community of wives and children in the Republic, and that would pretty much have been it. This is, for us, a focal topic. We obsess about it, and I think rightly so. We ought not, though, take this question in all of its urgency and make it the standard by which we design our curricula, decide which books to read and in what particular order, as it were, acting out our commitments pedagogically by pretending that what is posterior is really prior, or that what is secondary is at the center. We should take the questions themselves with frontal honesty and self-awareness into our confrontation with the works that constitute the living, enduring, quarrelsome traditions of which we are today the late coming heirs. And we should re-enter this tradition. We should reclaim it and re-enter it, not in the belief, not even, I think, in the hope that we will find there an answer to the question of life's meaning that will settle our brains and put our hearts at peace, but in the far more modest expectation that we will encounter a disturbing plurality of voices that leave us more unsettled than we were when we began, more enlightened, more human, closer to the center of our own restless, inchoate human being, but no surer of where the answer is to be found. If we can do that and approach again with loving attention these old quarrels, we will have begun to educate ourselves in a human way. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Tony, for that wonderful talk. And the first thing I want to say is, having just read his book on education's end, I can say for certain that has